So, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect then. Welcome to the Gardener community meeting. So let's start with the agenda for today. We have only one topic. So we have an introduction to the Gardener monitoring stack, the setup of the Gardener monitoring stack, and this is be presented by Wesley. Yeah, and with that, I directly hand over to Wesley.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Sure.
Okay. Can I share my screen?
Yes, sorry, I can't unshare at the moment. So now you can try it.
Okay, can everyone see the
Yes.
presentation? Okay, perfect. So yeah, my name is Wesley, and I'm going to give you an introduction to the Gardener monitoring stack. So this is just a overview of how we do monitoring here. Okay, so let's start with the agenda. First, I'm going to go over the monitoring components. So what do we use? And then we'll go over two scenarios. One is the shoot monitoring, and then the second scenario is for the monitoring setup for a Gardener installation. So like the central monitoring stack to get an overview of everything. Okay, so we use Prometheus, and if you don't know what Prometheus is, it's just a pool-based monitoring system, and so each component has a metrics endpoint, and Prometheus goes there and gets the metric, so pool-based, and then it's a time, it saves a time series. And then we use two other components from the Prometheus project, the alert manager. So if you couldn't tell, the alert manager sends out alerts based on Prometheus, and then we have the black box exporter, which we use to probe certain endpoints and check if they're available. And then that also has some metrics that are stored in Prometheus. To display all this data, we use Grafana, and we plan on having two sets of dashboards. Currently, we only have one. So right now we have dashboards for operators, so that's us. It's one set of dashboards, and in the future, it's currently a work in progress, we plan on having dashboards for the shoot owners. So if someone creates a shoot, they can also look at some parts of the control plane, and we'll give them some dashboards. But like I mentioned, that is currently a work in progress. And then finally, we have the Gardener metrics exporter, which is used in scenario 2, and that gathers, it's a custom component from us, and it gathers metrics from the Gardener, so like shoot information and stuff like that. We'll cover that a little bit more later in scenario 2. Okay, so the question is, what does each Prometheus do? So either if you're in the Gardener team and you look at some Prometheuses and you wonder what they do, or if you look at the code, there's more than one. So let's get into it. Let's look at scenario number 1, shoot monitoring. So here I have a seed and a shoot. And inside the seed, we have a garden namespace and a shoot control namespace, which is where the control plane is of the shoot, which you can see on the right. And also in the shoot, there is a cube system namespace, so just everything normal. And the gardener deploys 2 Prometheus instances. So one in the garden namespace, so this is just a central Prometheus that's in the seed, so it's only there one time in the garden namespace, and one Prometheus is deployed into each shoot control plane namespace. So if we have 10 shoots, we will have 10 of these Prometheuses. Okay, and this Prometheus right here, it's responsible for gathering all of the shoot metrics. So the shoot on the right, it gathers all the metrics for it. What is that? So it gathers all the metrics from the components in the cube namespace of the shoot, and it gathers all the metrics of the control plane components in the control plane, so like the API server and the etcd. And in the shoot, there's the components like core DNS, the Calico nodes, and other components like that. And to get the CPU and memory metrics from the containers inside the chute, Prometheus needs to scrape the C advisor and the kubelet, also to get node information about the chute. And it does that by going over a VPN to get to the C advisor and to the kubelet, and it scrapes and gets the metrics from there, and then filters out the CPU and memory metrics for the containers running in the kube system namespace. If you notice, the black box exporter also has like an orangish border. That's because it's also a monitoring component, and we use that to probe the API server to make sure that the API server is reachable from the chute. So we haven't talked about this garden Prometheus yet, or the Prometheus in the garden namespace rather. And what this guy does is he gathers all of the container metrics, so like CPU and memory of all the containers in the seed. And so just like the how the chute control plane namespace Prometheus got or scraped the C advisor and the kubelet, the Prometheus in the garden namespace also scrapes the C advisor and the kubelet inside the seed. So this gets all the CPU and memory metrics of the containers running inside of the seed. And then our Prometheus that's responsible for the chute scrapes the Prometheus in the garden namespace via a federation endpoint and gets the metrics inside of its namespace. So it gets the CPU metrics and the memory metrics for the API server running in its namespace, and then all of that data is stored inside of our Prometheus. So why do we have this garden, or why do we have this Prometheus in the garden namespace? It's basically just a cache for the other Prometheuses. It has a very short retention rate, and because if you've ever worked with the C advisor, there's a lot of metrics that come out of there, and we use this guy as a cache basically for other Prometheuses. Okay, so if we continue, this is basically just the same exact picture, just without the chute because there's some more components. So we have a clean slate again. So we have our Prometheus here. And we also have a Grafana running inside of the chute namespace. And there we, like I mentioned before, we have operator dashboards. And then in the future, we want to have chute owner dashboards too. And that'll be inside of one Grafana instance. And it gets its data from the Prometheus. Then if Prometheus notices that something is wrong, so if we define some alerts and the alerts fire, we'll send those to the alert manager, which runs in the garden namespace. And this gets alerts from all of the chutes. So if there's multiple chutes, we have one central alert manager that gets all of them and then sends them out. But we also have another alert manager that is optional. So if the chute owner would like to receive some alerts, he or she can just set this annotation, so garden.sapcloud.io/operated by, and then their email address. If they want to be notified about any alerts in the of the chute, then they can just put their email address there, and then they get emailed the chutes, or the alerts, sorry. And since we have two alert managers, Prometheus needs to know which alerts to send where, and we do that based on visibility labels. So the alerts have labels, and they have different visibilities. So we have 3 visibilities. One of them is all. So if an alert has the visibility label all, it gets sent to both alert managers, and they both send out the alert. So for example, if the API server is down, the chute owner and the operators would like to know about that, so it gets sent to both alert managers. And then for something with visibility operator, it only gets sent to the garden, to the alert manager in the garden namespace. And likewise, if the visibility is only for the owner, it only gets sent to the optional alert manager. Okay, so then we come to the second scenario, which is a monitoring stack for a Gardener installation. Quick disclaimer, this is not part of the open sourced Gardener project. This is our own custom solution for our installation. Okay, with that out of the way, let's start. So we have our garden cluster. So this is like the main cluster where the gardener controller manager runs. And here we also have a Prometheus. And this Prometheus does some health checks on some important components like the API server. And if something goes wrong, we send out alerts via an alert manager. And then here we have this Gardener metrics exporter, which is another component from us that I explained earlier. And this component gathers Gardener specific metrics, so like the shoot conditions and the other shoot statuses, and how many nodes are in each shoot, and some other metrics. And Prometheus gathers these metrics from the Gardener metrics exporter. And then to visualize all of this, we have a Grafana here too to display all of this information. Okay, and so all of this information is also in text form, basically. So this picture that you see here is basically just scenario 1, but a little bit more detailed. And we also have the link here to the monitoring documentation. So if you're curious and have more questions, you can just look at that, or you can ping me, you can write me, or ask any questions here. So that's it for the introduction to the Gardener monitoring stack. If you have any questions, let me know, or you can ask now.
Okay, thank you, Wesley. So I think we have no questions. So I think the idea was to come up with a second monitoring presentation after the refactoring of the dashboards has been completed. So and then we will also have a demo for that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have other topics? So I think this was the only topic on the agenda for today.
Maybe just one question.
Yep.
If I want to have, let's say, the Prometheus Grafana monitoring for my workload of my shoot, I mean, does it make sense to like copy the charts from Gardener, or is it better to go up on my own and deploying Prometheus and Grafana?
You could copy some of the manifests, like Prometheus and the Grafana ones. You could use them as a kind of like a base, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, you can use them if you want to, or you can just make everything from scratch.
Okay.
There are also other options like the Prometheus operator, which you can check out if you want to do monitoring for your workload running in the cluster.
I see.
So again, the disclaimer: the purpose of the monitoring stack is only to monitor the control plane plus the things which Gardener deploys into a shoot cluster, and nothing else. So there's no option to integrate monitoring for things which are running, which end user deploys into the cluster.
Okay, thanks.
I think we have a page on Gardener Code documentation page that describes how to deploy Prometheus with Grafana and to use our components, the node exporters in the kube system namespace. I'll send you a link about it.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. So again, the question: do we have other topics? Otherwise, we'll have a short community meeting this week. Okay, if not, then I wish you all to have a nice weekend and see you next week on Friday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.